should have the ability to turn on recording, and you could see, you probably look at it and see what the status is now.
All right. Recording is in progress, it says, but I don't know. It's 8 minutes and 19 seconds. Excellent.
All right. Well, all of this chit chat before the meeting has now been recorded.
Well,
you know, many people told me that they will be joining, so.
I'm glad to hear. I'm going to keep an eye out on our email, and I have my phone here in case someone calls. And I shared a lot of information with a lot of people in case they got misplaced.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see the participants list, but people are beginning to log in now, Kit.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen a list. Bruce, hey, how are you? Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Greetings. Hi, Kit.
Victor,
Hello.
Victor, do you know Bruce Hecht?
Yes, yes, I do.
Excellent. And do you know Tom Willis, Bruce?
Yeah.
Okay, Bruce, I was telling you about Tom and about Giovanni. He's also on the call. Giovanni and Tom are the people who have that wonderful museum, which has the relics, the reproduced relics of Alexander Graham Bell. Lisa, welcome. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Excellent.
Hey, Lisa.
Do you remember everybody here?
How are you?
Fine.
It's so nice to see everyone.
Happy New Year. We haven't talked since the beginning of the year.
Yes, lots going on.
Yeah.
I can now see Kit's jacket, but I'm wondering where the hell Tom is.
My new jacket, which I haven't gotten to wear. It's like new for me for like a long time, and I never got to wear it because who goes anywhere, right?
And in the meantime, Tom is pretending to be on vacation somewhere, but I think it's just in his living room.
Yeah, Giovanni, I'm up in the Adirondacks right now.
He's sofa surfing. That's what he's doing. So how do I see everybody who's here, Tom? Is there a way I can see everyone, or I have to?
There is a participants panel that if you turn on, you should see the list of attendees.
Ah, okay. More options. Let's see. I don't know. It looks like I have to scroll if I want to see. It looks like there are a lot. John, how are you?
Hello. Hello.
Hi. Hi. John, do you know Victor?
Yeah.
Do you know Bruce?
Yeah, I know John. Oh, John.
Good. I'm glad.
Are you in New York?
Yes, I'm in New York.
Okay, because the last time you were in Paris or somewhere, I can't remember. Lisa, do you remember we tried to get hold of John?
Yes, it was in Qatar, I think.
Qatar, is it? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't even know that was like a real place anymore. I thought it was like a historically significant place, but I didn't know it was a real place. I need to get out more, I tell you. You know? I have to get a globe. People in Europe have globes in their house, and you can go over to the globe and look at it, you know?
We have lots of globes at my house. You can come to my house and look at them.
Okay, after the pandemic, I'll wear one of those plastic suits with a, air mask and everything.
Have you folks been able to get the vaccine? Because I've been calling and calling, not calling, but checking my emails and
I have not, Victor. Not yet.
I don't know what stroke of luck my wife and I got, but we signed up with RWJ Barnabas Health about, I would say, 3 weeks ago, and probably a month ago, and we got the first shot a week and a half ago. They just simply contacted us, told us, go to this place at this time. The place was the New Jersey Convention and Exhibition Center in Edison. And we just walked in. There was no line. The very efficient operation, and they gave us the shot.
That's great.
Yeah.
I guess it's good. Sometimes it's nice to be old.
But Dave Belanger. You know Dave Belanger. I think you know him, Dave Belanger.
Yeah, it's a name that rings a
He's
bell.
from
But,
AT&T, yeah.
Yeah, he's an
He's on
AT&T guy.
AT&T Labs.
Yeah,
Hmm?
yeah, he's an
Yeah, he
AT&T
told
Labs
me,
guy.
yeah. He told me about this Robert Rue Johnson at Barnabas, is it Robert Rue Johnson, Barnabas.com or something? Is that the one you used?
yes, that's correct. Although I didn't do it myself. My wife signed up, both me and herself. But yes, it's RWJ Barnabas, Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health.
Yeah.
So Lisa,
Yeah,
did you recognize this great picture from our fabulous trip?
yeah.
No, it's
This
a
is
wonderful.
in Mike Molnar's dining room. Remember Mike Molnar's dining room?
Is that what it's from? I couldn't figure out the background. It's such a nice picture. I wanted to ask you.
You could see
I wanted to ask you for permission to save this one in our photo drive so that
I would be delighted and thrilled. What do you think, Victor? Is this a good one? What do you think?
One of my good friends, Ni Ajay, is on the line. Ni Ajay, how are you?
I'm good, Prof. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, that's my mentor right there.
Ni Ajay.
Yes, Prof. You know I wouldn't miss this for anything.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice.
So Lisa, are some of the other people from the History Center, do you know if they might plan to come?
Marianne told me that she planned to come, but I know that this morning at our staff meeting, she was having some technical difficulties, so I'm hoping she can still do this tonight, but she plans to be here.
It looks like Mike Robbins just joined us. Hi, Mike.
Let me excuse myself for a moment.
So it's already 6 minutes after. I don't want to rush ahead or anything because it looks like people are still joining us. And it's nice to get a chance to just say hey to people who we haven't seen in a long time. John, what have you been doing lately? John,
if I have to, well, I'm retired, but I'm very active with IEEE and with ACM. And right now we're finishing a Curriculum 2000 report, Curriculum 2020 report on computing education. And that's being published in March. It'll be out. And so that's where I am.
cool.
I keep busy with the History Center a bit, and with the SSIT, the Society for Social Applications on Technology, and so a bunch of things. My day is really filled, so it's, and I keep publishing and publishing, so I keep myself busy.
That's great. That's great.
Good to see you, John.
Yes, hello, Lisa.
Hi.
So, John, do you keep in touch with the IEEE Foundation Board?
Not the board itself, but some people on the who are on the board or on the board. You know, because my term expired, and so I left 2 years ago, and so new people come in. It's a good method because it gives everybody a chance to be part of something within IEEE. So, but you know, don't try to.
John, of all the things you've done with IEEE, can you select something? Can you share with us what thing you enjoyed the most?
Oh, I have to say it was working with the History Committee in the early days. With the early days, in terms of my early days with the History Committee, which is like the early 2000s. we've done some great things in terms of I was the head of its financial strategic committee, and so we made it you know a good entity, a financial entity within IEEE, as opposed to just being a passive entity. And I worked with several past presidents to make all that happen. And one of the things I'm proud of, which came out of that, was the IEEE Heritage Circle, okay, which was my idea, and then it got developed back in the middle 2000s, where people can give cumulative givings over time.
Cool.
So that was a good achievement.
So,
And of course,
are
we
you
have
also a member of IEEE?
Say that again, please.
Are you also a member of IEEE?
No.
No.
Oh. So
I should really introduce me.
I'm not qualified to be a member.
I should introduce him.
Yes,
Nee is a lawyer economist.
Oh.
He's an economist, and a lawyer. And I have known him for a very long time. He comes from Ghana too. And we went to the same high school.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I've known him. So I guess somebody must have told him about this talk. But I'm happy that he's on. Yeah. He used to be the commissioner of customs for Ghana. But here he works with a number of firms. And he does a lot of work on
Mike Robbins, how are you? There you are. I see you finally. Welcome. So it's very nice to see everybody here. And I'd like to introduce.
We should all mute unless we're.
One of my favorite role models and somebody we all admire, Victor Lawrence. Let me go to the abbreviated version of Dr. Lawrence's resume. Dr. Lawrence is Distinguished Research Professor, Director of the Center for Intelligent Network Systems at Stevens Institute of Technologies. He was previously Associate Dean and Charles Batchelor Chair Professor. He was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2016. He's a member of the United States National Academy of Engineering, a Fellow of the IEEE, Fellow of AT&T Bell Labs, and Charter Fellow of the National Academy of Inventors. Dr. Lawrence is co-author of 5 books, holds 53 patents, and has published 100 papers in referenced journals and conference proceedings. Before joining Stevens Institute of Technologies, Dr. Lawrence was Vice President, Advanced Communication Technology at AT&T Bell Labs and Lucent Technologies. He led the development of technologies for worldwide communications networks and managed an R&D staff of 500 scientists, engineers, and a budget of $100 million annually. His personal research activities provided major contributions to gigabit, photonic, and wireless research, signal processing, modem technology, ATM, and IP switching and protocols, HDTV, DSL, speech and audio coding. Dr. Lawrence co-founded 4 companies, Globespan, Semiconductors Inc., Ella Media, Lucent Digital Video, and iBiguity. He has received many professional awards, including the 2007 IEEE Simon Ramo Gold Medal, the 2004 IEEE Award in International Communications, and Emmy Award for HDTV Standard in 1997. Dr. Lawrence holds a Bachelor of Science, DIC, and PhD from Imperial College, London University. I'd like to turn over this presentation to our friend and our role model, Dr. Lawrence.
Before Victor starts, could you please ask everybody to mute? Because we get a lot of interference.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Just
Thank
so
you
we
so
can
much,
hear Victor better.
Yes, yes. If everyone would be kind enough to mute your system while Dr. Lawrence is speaking, and then if you have a question, please feel free to unmute and ask a question. I don't think Dr. Lawrence would mind being interrupted. It's very nice to have people who have a chance to ask a question, but the background noise might distract from the presentation. So if you have a chance to go ahead and mute at the moment, that would be great. Hector?
Yes, thank you so much, Keith. I will really be doing this presentation tonight together with Keith. As we go through this, you will find that she has some parts that she will address in this. So thank you. Now, I was thinking about what really to present tonight and what to say. And I called Jim West. And so Jim said, oh, he gave me a few pointers. So I said, okay, so let's start. And since most of you have got some association or the other with the Bell system, let's start with Alexander Graham Bell. And let's see what he did and how African Americans contributed to the success of the telephone system that we have in the world today. So the first slide that I will show will be Alexander Graham Bell's inventions. And as you look at this, on the left is in 1878 when he invented the speaking telephone. Now, and then on the right is when he invented the twisted pair. But let's start with the telephone. And the telephone, you needed a microphone in order to make it work and be able to be affordable for many people to use. So one of the key things was the microphone. So if we focus on the microphone, we see that if you go to the next slide, you see there was a black inventor, and he had a patent on this in 1884. And he sold his patent to Alexander Graham Bell. So after Bell invented the telephone in 1878, 6 years later, G.T. Woods invented the telephone transmitter. And that was nothing more than a microphone that he invented. And that made the telephone system affordable and to be used by many people. Now, go to the next slide. I've said this already. He received many patents, not only for the work that he did on telephones, but there were other patents that he worked on, and we will get there, and I will say a few things about that. So you could see one key part that an African American played was in the invention of the microphone. Now, this was in 1884. 70 years later, or 80 years later, came Jim West. And I was very lucky to meet Jim West at Bell Labs as well. But in 1962, before I joined Bell Labs, he came up with this electric microphone. And this electric microphone, it's a very famous one, and it really made it possible for telephony to be more affordable. Now, it made sure that they had the microphones was low cost, it was small size, and a lightweight. Now, today, 90% of today's microphones are electric microphones, and they are used in everyday applications in the telephones, in sound and music recordings, and hearing aids. So that was a very powerful invention that came 70, 80 years after the invention of the microphone by Woods. Now, if we go back to the, this is the Jim West. He's 90 years old now, and he lives in Virginia. Now, if you go back to Alexander Graham Bell again, that's the very second slide. Okay, yes. You can see on the right, when he invented this telephone, many people said, oh, this device is useless because, you know, you really cannot have many people using it and you can't be calling easily. And so he invented a twisted pair that went along with that. And you can see that the twisted pair has got the twisted pair cable, and then you have a shift, the thing around the cable. Okay, that was something that was very important indeed, because if you have to bury these cables or they have to be overhead cables, they have to be protected. And so comes the invention of Hawkins, Lincoln Hawkins. Please go forward a little bit so we can see Lincoln. Yes. So Lincoln then was the first Black researcher at Bell Labs, and he started in Bell Labs in 1942. I actually met him because he was in Bell Labs till into the 80s. And also, he was also the first Black member of the National Academy of Engineering. But what he did, he's a chemist. And so he worked on the polymer and the plastic polymer coating that went around the twisted pair cable. This made telephony penetrate deeply into the rural parts of the United States. So let's go to the next person. Okay, so now I just plugged in George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver, I mentioned George Washington Carver because I had the opportunity sometime last year in February, about a year ago, to travel with Jim West to Alabama. And we went to visit Tuskegee University, and that was where you had the museum of George Washington Carver. So I just wanted to just see the transition of my relationship with Jim West. And George Washington Carver is really an agriculturist, and he is the one that discovered different uses of peanuts, from using peanuts into cooking oil. He also discovered many other crops and potatoes, sweet potatoes and pecans. He was able to engineer these products as well, sweet potatoes and peanuts. And the next slide shows when I had the chance to go to Tuskegee with Jim West. The USPTO, the United States Patent Trade Organization, asked us to go there and give a number of talks in Alabama. And this was a photo of us when we visited the George Washington Carver's museum in Tuskegee. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay, now, there have been many other famous Black inventors. And one of them is Louis Latimer. And Louis Latimer also has a connection with Alexander Graham Bell. In fact, he was the draftsman for Alexander Graham Bell. And he also collaborated and worked on a number of things. So he's really known as an inventor of the carbon filament. And that was when he was working with Thomas Edison and Hiram Maxim. This was a very good invention indeed, and it really was able to make the light bulb much more durable. Now he did other inventions as well. He improved the railroad car bathroom, and he was also an inventor, and he did a lot of inventions on the air conditioning unit. So let's go to the next inventor. The next inventor is Otis Working. Now, it's very interesting indeed. He did something we call the electronic resistors. But the interesting thing is that the most important application of that was used for the heart pacemakers. Now, he really wanted to do this because the mother was suffering from heart attack and heart problems. And so he went in and did a lot of work on this electrical devices, or what we call electrical resistors. And that was used in pacemakers. It's also been used in televisions, radios, and computers as well. So let's go to the next inventor. Now, he is a much younger person, but the interesting thing is that he dropped out of school at the age of 14, but he was able to find his way. Now, the work that he did was really using massive processes, and to invent the world's first massively parallel processing supercomputer. So he was one of the people that worked on the supercomputer at IBM. So we go on to the next inventor, Garrett Morgan. Garrett Morgan is an interesting person as well. Interesting indeed, he couldn't get into the schools in the United States. So he went over to England and got his degree there. But when he came back, he found it very difficult to work as an engineer. But he was able to get a job in the railroads. And he was one of the things that he founded and he invented was to be able to, in the railroads, what you have to do is that you have to oil the wheels every time, and otherwise, and you have to do that continuously. And so he found a way to do it continuously, and that was a great invention. He also invented the traffic signal, the stop and go signal that was used in railroads, as well as that we can see in the automobiles, the traffic lights that we can see today. Okay, so let's go to another inventor. He's a younger one, and he's someone that did his work. He was an aerospace engineer for NASA, and he did a lot of work. And his work was on the Galileo and Jupiter probe, and then also on the Mars observatory projects. He also has a number of great patents indeed that goes with him. Then let's go to the next inventor, McDean. MacDean was, in fact, many people credit MacDean for being one of the original inventors of the IBM personal computer. And he was a, but he has a doctorate from Stanford University before he joined IBM. And this technology that he had actually had been able to help enable printers, keyboards, mice to communicate with the computer. So he is really also another great co-inventor of the IBM's original personal computer. That's MacDean. So we go to the next one. Marian Crook, many of you will know her because she was also from Bell Laboratories. And I think that then she went on to AT&T Labs before she left AT&T Labs and joined Google. She's the vice president of engineering at Google. She has done a lot of work in voice over IP and many others. I think she has about 130 something, 200 patents, yeah, or so. I think she was recently, this year inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this was another lady from Bell Laboratories. She is a physicist, and she is the first African-American woman to earn a doctorate at MIT. And I think this was in 1973. But she worked in Bell Labs for a while, and she's now the president of Rensselaer University. But she has also a number of patents, and she also, President Obama also gave her the National Medal of Technology. But she's a physicist, yeah. Okay, now these are the slides that really Kit will take over from. We've talked about Marian Crook. Another great inventor is David Tarver. He formed a company. I think that company has been, is now part of, I've forgotten the name of the company, but I think it's it has something to do with Verizon. And there is the other person on it. Yeah, you know a lot about these people, don't you, Kit? Why don't you take over?
I just wanted to mention that this came to my attention after the day of the event. I apologize. I wish I had known about it before the event took place, but there are people that we know and we admire, including, of course, Dr. Croak, who Victor was just speaking about, and of course our friends, Dr. Johnson and Dr. West. And we've come, I don't know that I've ever met David Tarver, but I'm guessing many people on this call or nearby have met Dr. Tarver. So it looks like
he was in Bell Labs.
Ah, okay, cool.
He was in Bell Labs, and he did a lot of work on simulators for the network.
So one of the things
so there's something we call the Tarver box that you use to do designs.
Oh, cool. So I wanted to point out that if anyone knows of other resources, we can include them in our IEEE New Jersey Coast Section History Wiki. We've been adding some content to the History Wiki for a number of different topics, including one that we call Visits with Victor, which are all of these various events and activities that we have collaborated on with Dr. Lawrence. And I think you might find them very interesting. And if you have a topic that you find interesting about history, there's probably something about it that Dr. Lawrence knows or is interested in. And we could probably make a little feature about it, either on our website or in a meeting. But if you know of other resources that can fit our current topic, please let us know, and we'll make them available or link them through our history website. We also right now have Eamon Wall on this meeting, and he is a patent attorney who also worked on many people's patents from Bell Labs. And I invited him to say a few things to be like kind of to go along with this inspiration to be an innovator, to be an inventor, to take your voice and elevate it, and to help others. One of the things that strikes me most about having had an opportunity to work with Dr. Lawrence is that I've seen just the people around him that he encourages to do whatever they can possibly achieve, including, I can't even tell you how many books I've seen on his bookshelves where he said, look at who wrote this book, look at who wrote this chapter. And he encourages people to write, to think, to create, to innovate, to invent. He's fostered that innovation in everyone. I'd really like to, at some point, make a list of the people who've worked with Dr. Lawrence and who have become inventors or who have inspired other inventors or created some book or chapter or article. I think we'd find his work has been very fruitful, not only for his own personal work, but also for inspiring others and supporting others in their efforts to raise their voice. So I'm going to just go through a few more charts here that have to do with inventing in general, and then ask Eamon if he'd say a couple words, and then we could take some questions because I know we all want to hear what Victor has to say. Let's see, what's the next slide? Where is the next slide? I've got this silly thing here. There we go. So this was one of the people who helped me innovate in the very beginning. You might notice the person who's upside down in this picture. Mike, you remember this picture that you took? Mike's on this call. Yes, Mike's on this call. So Percy Brown.
I do remember it.
Percy. Yes, I couldn't reach him. I couldn't find him. I don't know what he's up to right now. Mike, have you seen him recently?
I actually talked to him tonight.
Oh, my goodness. He couldn't join us?
I'm not sure he knew about it.
Oh, I sent him an email. Oh, that's a shame. I hope we can hook up with him sometime soon. So Percy is upside down, and he's the person who hired me into Bell Labs along with Mike and several other people who are on this picture. And Alfredus, who's in the picture, was my mentor who first said, well, maybe we should see the patent attorney. And I was just very thrilled to know a group of people who would be so encouraging about raising your voice, understanding that you have a unique voice, figuring out how to be an innovator and documenting that and sharing it with others. So I just want to say it was a great experience for me. This is a recent document, a publication by the United States Patent and Trademark Office that focuses on underrepresented people. And you might notice that Marion Croak is on this cover and also Jim West. And in the contents, you'll notice that Victor Lawrence is in here also. But what you'll notice in this document is that there have been a number of studies done by different organizations that give us some insight into the level of publishing of patents, patenting and publishing of patents in the United States of people who are, like in this case, they're looking at US-born people. And there was a survey conducted to try to identify the percentage of the United States population and the rate of representation of publishing of patents among these various groups, ethnic and racially diverse groups. And so you can see that we have a long way to go in figuring out how to provide equitable opportunity and access to people in our country to achieve in this particular field. Nobody has an answer yet, but I'm inviting people to brainstorm about that, come up with some suggestions, and maybe to find it in their own way, how to encourage people to be inventors. So here's some more characteristics of the income and the level of education or achievement of people's family members who have patents. This is another study that was conducted in New York City over a 20-year period. They looked at people who had attended schools in New York, what was the family income at the time of the person's birth, and then what the parents' occupation was, and what was there was a lot of very interesting information that came out of this study, but it was limited to New York. So that doesn't necessarily mean it applies to the entire country, but it does give us some points to ponder and think about. And here we can see the disparity that has persisted in our population in the United States. This again is the New York City schools, but in the city, everyone has access, most people have access to schools. And so it might be somewhat representative of large cities and school districts in the United States, perhaps. Here we have a life cycle of earnings, and you can see that people who are inventors have an opportunity to earn more than people who are non-inventors, and even than people who are high-skilled non-inventors. So this is something to consider when you're thinking about hiding your invention. Maybe you might want to promote your invention and then perhaps even commercialize your invention. Here we have some reports about from the Department of Labor, NSF, talking. This is the NSF. Yes, this is the NSF talking about the types of people who are in the workforce, racial composition, and fields of science and engineering. And so this kind of gives us an idea of opportunities that we have if we're, let's say, in education, or if we're in a workplace and we have an opportunity to encourage people or to promote people or to provide opportunities for people. There's actually something to be learned from this data. This one is another interesting chart giving us an idea. But of course, now we're looking at 2017, and we know since the pandemic, a lot of workplaces have changed. A significant number of people have had to leave the workforce for various reasons. And so we can expect that after the pandemic, there may be even more unusual things going on in the workplace. So we can all be thinking about how we can promote opportunities for people once the workplace opens up again. Okay, so Eamon. Oh, this is one of your inventors, Victor.
Hey, how are you?
That you wanted to... Eamon, where are you?
I'm right here. I'm starting my video. Did it come? Yes. How you doing?
Hi.
Hello, Victor. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes, welcome, welcome. So do you have any advice
we can hear you.
about... Can you hear, Victor?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Excellent.
Okay. Yeah, I see also one of my former colleagues, Mesfe, PhD, is on the line. So
Hi.
There you go. Yeah.
Hi.
So there's some, and I know this is a very patent savvy crowd, so I'm not. What would be a good topic, Kat?
Well, I was thinking how you and I had a conversation a couple of years ago about how, as a patent attorney, you help people find their unique voice and document it and raise awareness of how people can speak, with that voice.
Well, I try to keep people going forward in an intelligent way with their technology, such as it is. When I'm dealing with larger companies like the Lucents I did a lot of work for, now these days it's more cable and military and stuff like that. It's just a question of who the audience is for the technology. But there's a tremendous amount of innovation out there, and there's a lot of people that are just needing the financing going. I do a bunch of, in fact, I did one today. That's why I'm late to this one. I was in my office and I was doing a sort of this roundtable thing with a bunch of like investment type guys, and they're talking about their different ideas and what their clients are pitching, all of that. And all of it's got some technology basis. And it's pointless, honestly. It's like ridiculous, but it's sort of a solution searching for a problem. But behind all that is this bubbling, this effervescent activity where you're trying to get something, trying to break through, and it's fascinating actually.
So how do you keep the enthusiasm going without putting a wet blanket on somebody's idea early on?
I try to bifurcate the business idea from the patent idea. There are plenty of things that are not patentable that are great ideas, and vice versa. And honestly, my has always been, if you're going to fail at this process of getting a patent, this expensive process, you want to do it quickly. You want me to be the wet blanket saying, no, that's stupid, or that's not going to happen, and here's why. You got to challenge people, maybe not so crassly, but you have to challenge the concept, and you have to elicit from them, some aggressive defending of their idea, some championing of their idea, because ultimately the patent, the least of it, it's the marketing, it's the championing the idea, the business, it all comes down to who your customer is. Yeah, the patent's useful to protect you from your competitors, but unless you have a good customer base to service with a product or service that makes sense, that you can provide quickly, reasonably priced, value added, etc., it doesn't really matter what you're protecting. You got to protect things that are the value.
Do you think people can learn how to be that kind of innovative, where they come up with an idea and they also learn how to make it appealing, attractive, marketable, etc.?
I think they can. I think it's best that they join up with other people who have the skill sets that mesh with their own. I remember doing a lecture at, I think it was Baruch University, for some grad students, and they were, which I'd done many times for a friend of mine as a professor. And this particular lecture, they were these were finance marketing types. They were probably concerned about the job market. This is some years ago, and I suggested some of the people at some of the business incubators. There's a bunch of people there coding and doing apps and whatever they're doing, but they don't know anything about marketing or finance or whatever. So if you're young and single and you can stand eating ramen and bologna for a while, go for it. Check it out. And some of them have done that. They joined companies on the ground floor, and it was really, really good for them. And they provided that compatible skill set that the inventors didn't have. You have people with great technical ideas, terrible marketing ideas.
That's very, very good suggestion. Very, very good suggestion. And especially if the person who's going to volunteer or do an internship or couple up with a person who's an innovator, if they themselves are an innovator, but they haven't really matured their idea yet, they can learn more about the whole process by doing such a thing, right?
And they have to be able to pivot. It may turn out that what they're working on from a business perspective, the patent is a trailing indicator of where you are. Inevitably, your business should be out of catching up. You're picking up the pieces. It's a trailing thing, and it's designed to impede those following you. That's the whole point of it. Mm-hmm. It's not the thing that you push forward. It's the business you push forward, the product or service, whatever. The patent helps to protect that, to solidify your position, not from a competitive perspective. And people have to focus on really what counts. And I think they need to be just ruthless and unsentimental about this stuff. If it's not going to fly, kill it. There's something else. Go for something else. And, so that's my pep talk.
Thanks for the pep talk.
Yeah.
Which of the patents that you've worked on, which types of patents are the ones that you enjoy the most?
Kind of the hard ones, the math ones. If there's communication, the stuff with the government's fascinating, but there's so many. A lot of the communication stuff is great. I don't like doing. I want to work on something that is hard. I mean, anybody can do easy. You want to do something hard. That said, you'll do easy too. I mean, not going to be.
When you have a hard one, when you have a hard patent to work on, does it get more challenges from the patent office, or does it get fewer challenges from the patent office?
No, it tends to go through more quickly because I think sometimes they don't understand it, and so you have to be actually very careful that you are doing it correctly. I don't need to have a triumph of advocacy where something's, I have issued claims for something that there's a great piece of art that I didn't find and the examiner didn't find. I draft claims in part to help guide the examiner. I talk to the examiners to say, look, this is the art area. I've looked, here's what I looked at, but maybe there's more, I don't know, but here's what you ought to be looking at, just to make sure they're on track to examine it properly. My view is that my relationship with the patent examiner is kind of a cooperative thing. They're there to help guide me, to tell me where to go and not to go, what I can and can't have. And my job is to try. I want to ascend to the top of Everest, and they're going to, I don't know, maybe be a Sherpa of sorts to me. I don't know. Maybe it's a crappy example, but it's cooperative. It's not adversarial. It shouldn't be. It gets that way sometimes, but it shouldn't be.
So Victor, can you tell us a little bit about what patent that you might have worked on was the most exciting for you? Is there some invention or innovation that you enjoyed working on the most?
Yeah, I think the patents, I think I had the patent with Arun Netrivali and I think the late Jacques Werner. And that was on HDTV. That was when television was moving from analog to digital. And there were two parts of this. One part was the digitization of the video. And the other second part was the transmission of this digitally. And so what we had was the encoder, and then we had the modem in order to be able to transmit this digitally. So that was a very exciting one. Now,
is that the one that won the Grammy? Did you win the Grammy for that one?
Well, the Grammy was for the standard, because what we did was all these things culminated into the Emmy award. And then, of course, the one interesting thing is that the encoder that we built was one of the encoders that was used during John Glenn's second orbit in space. And this encoder was used to broadcast to about 150 stations or so. And it was viewed by millions of people, if not billion. But fairly recently, I found one of the patents that I worked on that, believe it or not, was not issued. But it was filed, but it was not issued. And I think Bell Labs didn't follow up on it. But it's a patent that would really have fetched Lucent Bell Labs a lot of money. In many ways, it was something to do with artificial intelligence.
And what about, do you know what it was about artificial intelligence? Do you remember what it was?
No, this was using, trying to find things that are in your fridge or in other places that are empty or not, using this intelligence in this. People are talking about that now, that they are thinking that we didn't think about robots, but we are thinking of using this type of intelligence.
Interesting. I always find that I
get it was never issued. So I can see there as a patent. In fact, when I get into the USPTO and I look at search those things, I see that thing there. It's one of the patents that were
abandoned.
Abandoned.
But
anyway.
So I find that when I read people's patents, I feel like I'm getting to know how they think a little bit better. And one of the ones that I read of your patents today, I reviewed a number of your patents today. When I can't sleep, I just read a lot, right? And one of the things I like to read is patents. So I was reading one of the patents that I thought was really wonderful that you wrote about object area networks. Yeah. And I'm thinking that this is something that's also very current, very prescient in in the way that you were thinking about. Can you tell us something about object area networks?
Well, it's all these things to do with intelligence, So you say the object area and then trying to find things in that area. So it's all with intelligence, trying to now it's so common to people,
Yeah, this one had sensors on it. this particular patent, you had sensors, heat sensors,
That's right.
sensors, and GPS sensors, and then like things that were
Yeah.
provisioned within the network and things that weren't provisioned. So you could, and you could dismantle a feature on one of these
Yes.
things. This is I really like that patent a lot.
Yeah, the area.
Yeah. There's a whole series of those patents, right, on that same topic, correct?
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah, artificial intelligence. But let me ask, one of the difficulties universities are finding is that they find it very hard for students and professors to file patents. How do you help them, Ewell?
We do represent some universities, for example. It's very difficult. I heard a lecture from, I think it was the head of IP at Cornell. Apparently, the statistic is that there's only cities in the entire country, 10 that are net positive cash flow within the context of their patent efforts. In other words, whatever costs are rolled into their patent efforts, subtracted from whatever revenues they've realized from those efforts, there's only 10 that have made a profit. And maybe you can go out a little further and say there's 20 or 50 or some other amount where it's intangible values, teaching tools, industry specific instruction, whatever. But fundamentally, it comes down to money. It's an expensive process. There are reduced rates and so on for universities. There are some rules and regulations, and there's often government funding. One other thing universities try to do is, file provisional applications and hope that a licensee is going to pop up somehow within a year. And it doesn't quite work that way. It's too short a time frame, and the vehicle of a provisional is a little bit too, sketchy sometimes. Things that I've done with, where, for example, they have where they know they've got funding, they just plow on it, just like a company. It's in the university, it's going to be outside. Princeton does different ventures and different deals with other people. I know Stevens does these kinds of things. Everybody's involved in this. But where things are speculative, or where the research is very basic, where you're not going to realize a product or anything for 10, 20 years maybe, there's not a lot of incentive. It's just not a lot of incentive. And so...
which are the top 10 schools that you were talking about? There's a list of them, right?
It was Stanford and Columbia and Cornell and probably Harvard, MIT for sure. I don't remember.
Bruce is on this line. Bruce, are you there? Can you hear me? Bruce? Did he leave?
No, I'm still here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Do you have any hi. Do you have any comments about what you know about MIT patents or other patents that you like? The answer to Victor's question.
Well, I know a little bit about patents. Refresh me the question, Victor.
Oh, I said that professors and students are finding it very, very difficult to apply for patents or have patents, and Ewald said, went on and said that yes, the universities have not really, only about 10 universities have really made money out from the patents, and therefore there's no incentive for them to continue.
So
these are good questions. So I'll say, before I moved to Boston, I was from Canada. So in Canada, I went to engineering school at the University of Waterloo. And part of the Waterloo motto is, whatever you learn at Waterloo, you own. So unlike, contrast, right? In Canada, particularly at Waterloo, the university doesn't take any ownership position, whether it's student or faculty. In the US, of course, there's the Bayh-Dole Act. So if you're into that, a lot of good, interesting stories. But essentially, universities are required to take the ownership position. However, one of the questions, though, has to do with what's your role as a student. So generally, if you're a graduate student or a researcher, so if you're working with a PI, with a grant, using substantial use of facilities, then you may have to enter into an agreement similar to like an employer, where you have an employer agreement. But if you're an undergraduate student, and there's some other categories, I think, as well, actually, then you don't have to enter that kind of agreement. So in that case, you fully own whatever you might invent. However, it's a complicated story. So however, if you have something that you think is valuable, you could also approach the MIT Technology Licensing Office, and you can pitch your idea, and you could ask them to become a partner, essentially, in which case they potentially will fund the patenting work. Of course, in that case, you're going to be transferring some, but you could then negotiate, how much share of the ownership. Whereas if you're a faculty or if you're a graduate student that's substantially using the university resources, you've pre-agreed to what share you're going to give. So interesting questions, I think. But I was curious to know more about this. I think there's a lot of really interesting perspectives in this room, this virtual room, about that question, right? How to discern, where to get the value, right? How to build something invent something strategically that's valuable, and then to take it forward. So I'd be curious to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a different model that's a hidden model, like I think in many inventors' history and their experience, they don't know what the hidden part of the model is. Like what you just described is a hidden part of the model. They don't necessarily know how they should position themselves within that model so that they can benefit from the model, right? And that's kind of what a mentor can do to help you, is to figure out like how do you position yourself, and how does a school, for example, understanding that another school can do this much better, another school can figure out how to make money from patenting. How does a school position themselves or engage in a program or a plan that's successful in this area, So your school is successful in this area, right? MIT?
Yeah, well, both MIT and Waterloo, I would say. Again, Waterloo's idea is you go do it, and then, based on your success, which a lot of universities have this as well, right? If you're successful, you will want to give back, but you're not obligated to do it. It will be up to you to choose how you want to return, the favors that you've gained. Of course, you're also on your own, right, to then raise the work, as to how are you going to do it. But yeah, so I'm interested, it's interesting because for patents, many patents, are developed, but they're not really commercialized, right? They're granted, but they don't necessarily deliver value to the inventor or to if you assign it to someone. There's of course the magic, right? That's the patent that's granted, and you can use it, which there, of course, in the tech world, there are many successful cases of that. And then there's there's I don't know what the other case would be. There's another case which is, I guess, never. It never, it's a patent, but it never has any value. But I don't know if that's true. How much is never any value, and how much is there's value, but it comes after the patent, has expired, or the fees
there's
have
often
been paid.
no value in the moment. I mean, depending on the technology, also, some universities bias their programs toward a particular technology, like pharmaceuticals, for example. Some of the New Jersey universities are biased towards pharma. That's a long-term kind of thing. High-tech patent, computer arts, these kinds of things, those are short-term, relatively speaking. I mean, forgetting the notion of patent term, just you can quickly get from conception, reduction to practice, productization, and so on, maybe not within the time period that the student is actually in the school, but pretty quickly. And I've had conversations with students and professors, frankly, where they think they have an idea and they want to go forward, and they're worried the university is going to do some terrible thing, taking everything. And I point out, look, this Princeton, for example, they're really easy to work with. And I know MIT is also. They're really easy to work with. Just talk to them. You really want to talk to them, because not only should you, because you did kind of invent it on their dime, but they'll help you. They'll help fund it or connect you to people or whatever. You become part of that ecosystem. This is something you want. You're getting you're getting something of value by sharing with them, and they don't ask for more than a small amount. Is my opinion and presentation to them.
But the lifetime of patents is still 17 years, is it?
Well, 20.
20.
For priority, yeah, when you file it. So 17 is what it used to be. You know, there's ways to keep things going a little bit, but ultimately, you have terminal disclaimers and classes, and, you know, families of patents, and 20 years is it. In the computer-related arts, 5 years might be fine. You know, pharmaceuticals, I'd like to get 30 years. It just depends what you're doing. Some technologies take a really long time to get to product, to get to revenue, and others takes, you know, you can quickly get it out there. So the system doesn't really fit all the technologies, the subject matters, all the subject matter it's supposed to fit. I don't know the answer to that though.
Yeah, no, it's difficult because, you know, maybe the market does not develop quickly enough for you to realize this, and the market starts developing after the 21st year.
Yeah. I tell clients that I would much rather have a strong business plan than a strong patent. Much better to have the business figured out properly. I want them to put the resources where they're going to get the bang for the buck. I am ancillary to their thrust as a business. I might be useful, I might be helpful, but the patents are not a silver bullet. But they're more than things that just get hung up on the wall. They have value. It's a question of, do you have the capacity as an inventor or as a business to actually tap into that value? Often people, you know.
No, but you know, it occurs to me that going through the exercise of inventing teaches you something about how to think about something that's beyond your desktop, beyond what someone is instructing you to do, and to recognize the difference. You know, so it really does truly teach you about yourself going through the process, even if that process isn't about a cash transaction. I mean, there are a lot of innovations coming from 501c3 or nonprofit or humanitarian types of activities, you know, and so there are many ways to apply your skills, and especially as an engineer, you have like a very special set of skills, you know, as an engineer.
Oh yeah, just the process of drafting a patent application, not so much for me, but if I'm working with an inventor, just kind of out of them all the things I need to get from them and arranging it the way any patent attorney, any patent agent, anybody in this business does. It's important that they know how to do that. It's important that they know how to talk with all of the creatures that exist in the business world, you know, attorneys and patent attorneys and money people and venture people. You've got to be able to talk with all these people at some level. And it's a good start to be really organized. And typically patent attorneys are pretty organized in patient and so on. We just split down. The inventors can say, oh, okay, I see what you did. I can do that too. And then like the second disclosure is much more focused and much more, you know, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is why we're better. And you really quickly get to what counts. And then you can very quickly get to, it was already years or so, you know, you might have an issue, you might not.
And it helps you learn about what other people are doing too. It helps you learn about where your thoughts fit into the rest of the world.
Yeah. The first thing I tell people when I talk to them is, you need to do patent search. I may do one later, but you need to do one yourself. A, because it's free. B, because in doing so, you're going to identify possibly prior art that'll save you a lot of money, but also potential partners. You'll identify a lot of the people by the market space that you wish to be in. And if you don't have knowledge, you need to get
it just, I think, just as a learning,
people,
like, yeah, and even like just to think about the fact that maybe your invention isn't a straight shot toward a commercial product, but it may be a humanitarian thing, you know, and that's valuable. That has value, you know. That's a different way of thinking about your creative energy as an engineer, but it's certainly a valuable voice, you know.
I've seen things where you've got technologies that are useful, commercially useful, but also useful in some other way. If you want to see some rollout of technology to people in need at a humanitarian level, well, you kind of want to own it first. I guess you could defensively publish it in some way, but it's best to just own it and license it free to the people that you want to see, exploited for the benefit, the humanitarian benefit that you're thinking of, whatever it might be.
Or even that you sell some number of them, and then for each amount that you sell, you donate some other amount to,
Yeah, you could do that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that maybe your model isn't only a business model; it's a way to help people model. That's all I'm suggesting. Yeah.
Donations of profits, I've yet to see it be other than business marketing model.
Right.
Yes,
I had a question now.
Sure.
I wanted to follow up on the conversation from earlier about the culture, like the mentoring, like how do people learn to become, inventors and to approach patents, and was there more thoughts about what's worked well? Like, because I think everyone that's here maybe has had some experiences for their own, and then what could we be doing more of? With
I just noticed that Shakik just signed back on again. I wanted to say hi and invite you to give us your point of view. Maybe you can address Bruce's question. What do you think?
Oh, what was the question again?
The culture of patenting and mentoring and being mentored. Earlier, there was this discussion that most people have had experiences that somebody helped either tell them, let's go talk to the patent attorneys because there's something good here. Let's find your voice, like Kit had said. So I was curious to know more about what has worked well, but more importantly, what do we want more of?
That would be a very good resource, a viable and maybe invaluable resource to have some sort of folks besides patent lawyers who could help to guide young inventors and even people who have ideas. I mean, I see the commercials on television about you have an idea, come up with it, and we can help market it. We know what we're doing. Just bring your brilliance, and we'll do the rest. And that sounds good. But I tell you, there's a lack of trust in our world today. So, someone who thinks they may have a good idea or just something that could be patentable might not be so eager to disclose their information to strangers. So there are people, and that had the regular access to, and people maybe in academic level. I think it's maybe all levels, academic, especially in the workplace. Or not, that would be invaluable. It'd be nice though also if there was some concise, terse instruction manual, like a guidebook that gave you step by step, very not so just very eloquent instructions on how to do it, the steps it takes, and then maybe if you want to go further, point you in the direction of where you can get the resources, the financial resources to patent your idea, and then commercialization, et cetera, that can happen later.
I like what you said about having people available to you in the workplace, because I think that's when many people, like STEM works, it seems to work very well in education setting, but then when people transition into the workplace, there's often a less than stellar record of supporting people, especially underrepresented people or people who have non-traditional background or experience, and so having people on the alert throughout people's entire life cycle, because you might suddenly become an inventor when when you're 50 or 60, you just don't know, right? You might suddenly get inspired or suddenly have enough time or energy or ideas at a different stage in your life than one might have prescribed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I can tell you just from my own experience at AT&T. I've been at AT&T about 7 years now altogether, 2 as a contractor and 5 as an employee, maybe 6 as an employee. I can tell you, the patent lawyers at AT&T are very aggressive. You come up with an idea, you got to write APP at these group meetings. Boy, they are slinging their guns very aggressively. And they have a lot of experience, 30, 40 years experience working with each other between the patent office and the labs. But, what you'll find is, there'll be tons of people's names thrown on the patent. Most people you'll at least know, okay, but you have no control over that. And, the number of patents that a company like AT&T can dole out is pretty phenomenal. So I know there's a recipe, there's a step-by-step process, which is relatively routine that, it could be, somewhere easily accessible.
And what's nice is that you have access to that group of people, and other people may not have access to that group of people.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. If you work for AT&T, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. So if you happen to be at another company or in a different organization, or you happen to, like in my situation, if I hadn't worked for Percy Brown and worked with Al and Mike and other people who had experience coming up with new ideas and understood that patenting was a thing, I might never have had that experience myself, right? You could have gone through your whole career and not known that there was such a thing if you worked in the wrong organization. So Bruce, do you have a program in your school that addresses, like, do you have like seminars on inventing, Bruce?
So there's a lot of resources for entrepreneurship, and I would say patents is included there. So yes, but I think there could always be more, and there's two parts to it, right? One is you have the idea, now you want to learn, right, what does it take to do the patent? But the other part, I put a little note there in the chat about this one book that I had come across when I first got involved in patenting, and that's called Rembrandts in the Attic. It's a model of strategic patenting. And essentially what it says is, okay, obviously if you've come up with something that's inventive, right, you should seek a patent. And again, if you're in business, that's what you want. Hopefully you're in business and you think you've got things, you're about to release a product, right? You should ask yourself, right, wait, was there something patentable? So that was part of processes I've been involved in, is make sure that people, think about it early. But the other part of Rembrandts in the Attic is, that's a hard way to be successful, because the chance that you're actually going to make the right invention, the chance that you've in the right place, the right time, and then that you recognize it, and then at the end of the day, will you get enough claims awarded to you that's really going to make a difference? Maybe you would have been just as well off, right? You didn't patent it, all that. But what their argument of that book was is be a strategic inventor, right? So think about what is the unsolved problem, right? The unmet need that prior art hasn't solved, right? And then say, well, if only I could make an invention here that would do, which again, I think probably in the stories that are here about, the inventors that we've been talking about that have made incredible inventions, and the AT&T story, this is not going to be an unusual way to think about it if you come from that mindset. But often if you're in I just got to finish this thing, I just got to ship this month's product or whatever it is, then that cycle maybe means you never spend the time to think.
Well,
the idea was think the white space, and decide what you don't have the invention yet, but you're like, well, now the good news is if you come up with an invention at that point, you're going to be in good shape for, number one, this could be valuable for your customers, right? Because it's doing something that better solves a problem that hasn't really been solved well before. Number two, it'll be patentable because you can show, well, this is what other people have tried. Customers, the marketplace needed this, but it wasn't really being served. And here's why the invention is doing what others tried but didn't. And then thirdly, after you would be granted that patent and you'd have the customers, now you'd really be able to get the leverage. So that's kind of the mindset.
So the question that came to my mind while you were chatting is being in the penumbra of so many illustrious people, So if you're in Bell Labs and you're surrounded by geniuses and amazing people who walk on water and are phenomenal and historic in stature, how do you come to feel confidence in your own voice? How is it through their mentorship? Is it through their leadership? Is it through them as a role model? You know, like even what Shakik was saying, can you trust? Are there people around you can trust? You know, how do you develop that kind of, and I think that might be a key. That might be something for like a whole other meeting, right? A whole other discussion about how you develop that relationship so people feel like bringing their voice forward, or that you can take advantage of these amazing people at MIT or the amazing people in Bell Labs or other little groups that we know of, right? Other people that we know.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful way to put it. Yeah, the culture of learning.
Yeah. So if you can think about people being under the penumbra of the most illustrious people, how do you work with that?
Yeah.
Does it work on your behalf or does it work against you?
It is risky, but I tell you, once that idea is released, they move aggressive. They'll come to you at that point. At that point, it takes up a whole mantra of its own.
So when was your first patent, Chicky?
My first patent was in I had the idea, okay, and that's true. And I'll talk about the culture, that cutthroat geekish culture that I was in somewhat at APT. Not everybody, but a couple people there, which I'm not really accustomed to, coming from where I came from. But the first one, the idea came about probably in 2014, so about a year after I started working there, and I didn't reveal it until maybe 2015. I waited a year to reveal it.
And that was
I waited to the end of the meeting to do it. Right when we were about to leave, that's when I brought it up.
I've been told that's the best way to do it.
Oh, okay.
Did you figure that out on your own, or did someone advise you?
No, I just wanted it. I was just, holding back, and I just said, okay, forget it. Let's see what happens.
Victor, when was your first patent? What was your first aha moment? This is an invention.
Oh, my first patent, believe it or not, it was on digital quantization effects in digital filters. And that was when we were really moving from analog to the digital world. And most of the AT&T equipments, we're trying to move from using analog processing and go to digital. And so most of it was based upon this. But when we built the first digital filter, believe it or not, it was unstable, and it depended on the number of bits, and there were oscillations, limit cycle oscillations. And so we had to find a way to minimize this. I think the patent attorney that worked on this, Barry Friedman, was my first patent attorney.
My first patent attorney that I worked with was Barry Friedman.
And I was so impatient at that time. I was telling him, look, I wanted to publish this. And he was taking his time to do it, or first of all, there's a whole backlog, So I was that, it was frustrating. But eventually, when we got that done, the second one was easier and the third one was easier because it was all based upon the first one. But it was really made a transition from analog to digital.
And did you decide at that moment that, or had you been planning on being?
Because what happened was that when I discovered that there were these limit cycles that were coming into this because of the number of bits. You can't have so many numbers. Now, these days, you have floating point, you have this. But before then, we only had fixed number of bits to do the processing. And we encountered these limit cycles, and it made the thing unstable. The filters became oscillators. So and then we said, okay, then how can you make sure you don't have these oscillations, and that was where the first invention came in. But those were very hard times going from, and that was the first time of the digital signal processor and all that. They were very exciting times. T1 has just been introduced, but people were still doing things in the analog domain, you know, L carriers. Very good.
Thank you so much.
So you've helped. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you have any other comments that you'd like to make? Any inspiring thoughts for the day?
Oh, no, there are no extra things. I'm so happy that you organized this function, and I'm so happy that you've got a lot of statistics that we all need to work on, and hopefully we can encourage the younger ones to keep inventing.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing, you know?
Yeah. So thank you.
Celebrating our history, inventing our future. That's the whole thing. Does anyone else on the call wish to ask a question of Victor or say something that's exciting and fun from their point of view?
Hi, my name is Mesk. I'm a patent agent, and Amy mentioned me earlier.
Yes.
She's an excellent agent.
I have one question. Is there any particular thing now you see in being in a university environment that's as transformative as that analog to digital move was? Like, is there any particular technology that stands out like that to you?
Yes. Well, things change. At this very moment, many people are talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks. These are the things that people are thinking about. Maybe in about three years from now, it may be all in climate change, and therefore it will be green technologies and so forth. So things keep moving. But at this very moment, it is in artificial intelligence. Whether you can ever have that, it's always doubtful. Whether you think you can have a machine that can even behave like a baby or a young kid. In fact, if you give a child, maybe a year old or 2 years old, and you're giving the person a glass, if the person sees that they cannot hold it with their hand, they will use two hands, or even sometimes they put it on their stomach just to hold the thing they are doing. I don't know whether these machines can do that. And if you ask a child to go down the stairs, the child doesn't go forward. The child turns round and stays creeping back. I don't know whether we can get machines to be able to think that way. So there is a long way to go. And as we said, things change.
And the AI, the recent report on AI that the United States Patent and Trademark Office just published recently, was it like last month or the month before, pointing out the extremely large number of patents that have been filed in the past, what, 2 years, a year or two, by China compared to the United States and, you know, domestic. We're already falling behind in this area. We're already I think we're already caught in our own business model of delay. Like, what is the delay that we're having in catching up on something that's clearly urgent? It's clearly important, you know?
I think you have to look at some of the scope of the patents being filed. We tend to hear file broader, larger specifications than a lot of other countries. It's that can't be the sole metric. It's, you know, it comes down to, I remember when I was with GRC licensing, we did like this whole Six Sigma program. And then, but it was impossible to quantify in any meaningful way from a Six Sigma, you know, Crosby kind of perspective, quality perspective, what's a high quality patent? You can't. You can talk about the process, chunks of it, whatever. But it's sort of like applying Six Sigma to, to Rembrandt, but the actual Rembrandt,
Correct. But if you have somebody filing 40,000 of them and we're filing 6,000, 4,000 or something like that, they're taking up the time of your agents and the processing of the patents. And
also sharing the knowledge.
They're sharing the knowledge, but they're also using it to as a leverage in business.
Yeah.
And so, there's so many different things. If there's that order of magnitude, that much more going on from one player compared to us, it's something we should be paying attention to in some way. Finding out what are these good patents, are they not good patents? Theoretically, like you said, they're leading the examiner to conclude that these are good patents, right? Somehow they're leading the examiner to conclude that.
Well, they're filing still. They're not.
Yeah. But Kit, the biggest problem is, can you easily have major inventions like the transistor, the laser, and others in this present world we are in? Now, these things happened because AT&T had the freedom to do this. But I don't see any of these companies, whether it's Facebook or Google or this, doing fundamental research that will lead to a new major invention like the transistor. When the transistor came in, it was when we moved from analog to digital after they had the transistor.
Right.
So the question still has to be answered.
Even the genetics, and even like the AI and other things we knew that existed didn't become relevant until the pandemic hit. Then suddenly people recognized the value of a lot of this stuff because there's a convergence
the
of
RNA.
Yeah.
Messenger RNA.
Right. And so there's a lot of this stuff that never mattered at all, and now it matters. And so even the transistor so there's
in that line.
Yeah, and like you were saying, climate and other things, there are problems that they do change the environment of those innovations,
Yeah.
I think also in China they have incentive for the inventors.
Correct.
So we don't have something like that.
And the incentive is now at the right amount so that they can afford to file the patents, because our filing costs have gone down just to the right level that they can file the patents. It fits into their incentive payment. So that's something.
Yeah, I think the USPTO should look into this.
Yeah, they just published a big document about it saying it's a problem. That's why I mentioned it. I wouldn't assert that without evidence, I wouldn't say, I understand what Eamon is saying. I haven't read those 40,000 patents, so I can't attest to whether or not they're quality patents or whether they're patents with one claim or patents that are, not important. But the fact is, even if they're just throwing these things into the pipeline, it's occupying our patent agents,
I've read dozens and dozens of patents in this space. They've been asserted against cases I'm working. So many cases. It's so minutely derivative. And maybe I'm getting a bad attitude about it, but I'm looking at some of these inventions, and I'm using that in air quotes, if you will.
Right.
That I said, okay, great. So you tweak the learning a little bit, and now you do this. So what?
Right. But you're still going to have to argue with
something is obvious, huh?
Well, I think
it's obvious.
It's like earlier software patents where it's hard to search. It's hard to search from a patent examiner perspective. It's really hard to do a decent search sometimes. And now we've got this rush of filings, and it'll shake out. It'll shake out in terms of the technology, and it'll shake out in terms of the ability of patent examiners in the patent office to sift through the wheat and the chaff here and identify what really is inventive. But just one point you made earlier, part of the broader arc of the narrative, this presentation, I think is, and I think Shakik was talking a bit about this, was inventorship and encouraging people to invent and so on, and get involved. You have to meet others where they are, you know, and often you've got young people, young engineers in a company, and I tell inventors, because they say, well, why should I bother with the disclosure? My view is, anytime you say, oh, wow, this is cool, come here, check this out. Anytime that kind of a conversation happens, potentially something of value is there. I don't think that's the point to write a big, huge disclosure and spend a day on it, but it maybe is worth a phone call to somebody to say, hey, what do you think about this? You know, is this something we should talk about? And I've encouraged some of my clients to go to like a 2-step disclosure process. Step 1 is just capture it, just get it, something, a couple bullet points, dissimilar fonts of a ransom note, anything, just to get some guy to look at it and then say, that's kind of interesting. Let's keep working on that, or it sounds like what you know, or why don't you talk to Bob down the hall? Doing Lucent work, one of the things that I came across a lot was I would be talking to one person and say, oh, that is very much related to what so-and-so over here was doing, and I don't want to, what the hell did I just do now? I don't necessarily want to cross-pollinate between clients, but I'm okay with, like, within a client saying, you ought to talk to so-and-so. And, you know, there are incentives. The thing that companies are trying to do is encourage disclosures. Having too many disclosures is not a problem. That's a good problem. It's not getting enough disclosures. And they try everything. They try, you know, monetary incentives, T-shirts, and all the rest of it. I think ultimately while the money is always nice to give an inventor, a lot of it is they're doing it because this is what they like to do. They, you know, it's an honorific. It's sort of clear ratification of validation of their thought. Hey, I did this thing. Here's a piece of paper that says it was never done before. I did this. I know that AT&T, again, to Shakib's point, was they're very strict in terms, like everybody must be in terms of inventorship. There should not be a bunch of people on an inventor any more than, you know, a few, depending who did it. When I start to see, no offense to the managers, but when I start to see a lot of managers' names on patent applications, I get worried. I want to know what claim I specifically asked. What claim did you contribute to?
Which claim? Yes, point at the claim, exactly.
I need people to be able to go to the witness stand and swear that, yeah, I contributed to this invention. I claimed 15. That was me. I'm all over it. And that's fine. I'm not going to push them harder than to just simply say, this is what's expected of you. And if you're not entirely sure, you know, just leave it to your folks. Let them have the credit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I'm happy. Are you guys happy? Is everybody happy now?
Yeah, it's been a good meeting. So thank you so much for organizing it.
Is that a trick question? No, I'm kidding.
We'll check in again next month on women's history issues, women in engineering history issues. So I hope everyone will join us again and send your friends. Tell us what you want to hear about. We'll meet up again, and you'll get an invitation. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
what
you.
A great program. What a good gathering.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank
Ciao.
you. Ciao.
And Nia J, thanks so much for joining.
Yes, it was great to meet
Commissioner Nia J.
Is he there?
Much, yeah?
I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I had to
It's
mute
been a
him.
pleasure. The discussion is all over my head.
No, but you're a lawyer.
Yeah.
A lawyer by training, so.
You just listen to a lawyer.
Well, this is heavy stuff here. Artificial intelligence. That's heavy. But I thank you. I thank you for allowing me to be part of this.
It was very nice to meet you.
Take care.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye. Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Okay, thanks. Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you could join us. Did your students join? Did any of your students?
Last question. If I want a recording of
we'll
this.
have it online. It's going to be online. It's going to.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Great. I know